Welcome to Cybersecurity Growth, a show for aspiring and existing cybersecurity leaders. I'm your co-host, Sean Valley, Managing Director and CISO of Cybersecurity Growth. I am also a musician here on Twitch and elsewhere under the name Music by SV, but more on that later. Welcome to episode number 19, the Breach Blizzard of 2024. And hello to my co-host, Garrett Gross. Hello, Garrett.
Hello, Sean. Glad to be here. How are you?
You know, I'm doing good. It's a lovely day in the neighborhood. Glad we are back again for another edition. A whole lot of news to talk about today. You know, usually our shows are a specific deep dive where I feel like we take our audience into a classroom and bring them up to the whiteboard and kind of walk them through some learnings, and today is a whole lot of news that maybe we will learn something today, but it'll be just a little different.
We might even learn you something, viewers.
Oh, this is so exciting. Well, before we get things started, I want to give folks a little bit of an idea of how we do things here, but first off, a shout out to some of our new followers. We've been keeping an eye on things, and we're excited to say we've got some new followers over on Twitch. So for those we haven't said hi to before, we would like to say hi to Gun Void Walker. Thank you for the follow. AXROOT, Axroot. Thank you for the follow. Vero Theus. Thank you for the follow. Toy in Key and Aspire 705. Some really interesting names over there.
Not like I do it any better, but I just love the fact that you're reading the names, because like there's no telling what the real pronunciation is.
Nope, but I go with it. And also to note, over on YouTube, we've had quite a few follows over on YouTube. So thank you to our friends who have been following us over there. We are paying close attention. I've seen people follow us on TikTok, believe it or not. And I'm seeing people even download the podcast. So appreciate everybody for the support. Hope you guys are enjoying learning some cyber stuff, and maybe this is even a little bit entertaining for you. That's our hope.
The global intelligence community appreciates your use of TikTok.
Yes, they do. They do. Okay, so a little bit of our rundown for our show. We start the show with our Nerd Zone, which is basically where we bring a lot of news topics in. Sometimes we have one or two, sometimes we have a lot. Today is a day where we have a lot. We have a hot topic section, usually every week, where we deep dive into something interesting. And our hot topic this week aligns with some of our news. We're going to learn a little bit about the company Snowflake, who they are, what they do, and why are they in the cybersecurity news as of late. So that'll be our hot topic for today. And that's probably going to wrap most of us up for the day. We seem like we have a lot of content in Nerd Zone and Hot Topic. But
it's a pretty heavy news day. You know, we've noticed recently that the breach news it's the gift that keeps on giving, which is, you know, I guess great for us, but not great for the community. But yeah, this is definitely a heavy news day. Heavy
news day is right. But before we get started, a very important thing that we talk about every show before we get started. We like to pretend like we are on the red carpet at the beginning of the Emmys, and we're walking in and we get asked by a reporter, who are you wearing today? And so, Garrett, I'm going to pass this to you to get us started. Garrett, who are you wearing today?
Well, for folks that are viewing us on video, you can't really see the text or anything, but this is a shirt from LastCon, which is the Lone Star Application Security Conference. It is an OWASP associated conference, OWASP being the Open Web Application Security Project. What a great organization. Lots of free resources. You know, they put out the OWASP Top 10, a lot of other great educational resources. I love speaking at OWASP events. In fact, I just did one a couple days ago. I absolutely love that community, that group. It's just full of very helpful, informative, and folks. They get a lot of great speakers. They also get speakers like myself to join and
I'm sorry,
talk.
You said great speakers. Yeah. You said great speakers and speakers like myself. I noticed you had two separate categories there.
That's correct. We get really, really smart and somewhat security celebrity people, and then me also get to talk sometimes. But no, the Lone Star Application Security Conference I got to speak at the past couple of years. I do not believe I'll be speaking this year, which is okay, but you should still still attend. It's in Austin, Texas, October 24th through the 25th. So check it out for sure.
That's good to know, and that's an OWASP sponsored event. So for folks who may not be in that region, go look at OWASP.org and see where there might be some other events maybe in your area if you're not able to make that one.
They'll put all the talks online as well. I mean, they're
That's
really good about, giving out kind of free educational resources. So,
That's awesome.
and support them if you have some money, like Sean. If you have a bunch of money, you want to support the organizations, OWASP is a great one to support for sure.
Like Sean, you're saying I should be throwing lots of. Maybe I'll take some of our sponsor funds and send that right over to LastCon.
There you go. Please do.
All right. Well, good. Thank you, Garrett.
Sean, I wouldn't like to neglect you. You've always got a pretty good collection of security and tangential other related clothing. So I'll pass the mic to you. Who are you wearing today?
Thank you for asking, Garrett. Today, so I'm wearing one that you may have heard me mention before on an earlier shirt. This is the Source Security Conference. I had one of their shirts on before, so it's a small conference in the area of Boston, Massachusetts, but they have several locations around the U.S. where it's a very small, well-supported, but I should say small, locally supported security conference. The shirt that I'm wearing today is from the 2012 show. So this one's got some age on it. I was surprised that it still existed and had to squeeze into it as I started today. But the 2012 Source Security Conference at Boston, Massachusetts. But that's not all. Sometimes I have more than one thing. I'm not wearing, but of the coffee mug right here, it says Advanced Cyber Security Center, and it says Collaborative Defense, Trusted Networks. So I should put a disclaimer because some people are familiar with the acronym ACSC, which is the Australian Cybersecurity Organization. This is the Boston Advanced Cybersecurity Center. So
is that like a DARPA offshoot, or what is that?
I don't know. I wouldn't call it a DARPA offshoot. I think it's more of a kind of a meetup organization. It is a not-for-profit organization trying to bring together public and private folks to work together, collaborate, sometimes do cyber range events, and learn and share from one another. So usually it's sponsored by local organizations that are either in the information security, cybersecurity space, government space, something along those lines.
This is a little bit of a bent and not related to security at all. But you're a Boston native. Why don't you have that accent?
I have been. Everyone in my family has the Boston accent, and I think about key things that I grew up with as a child. One is a wicked hard Boston accent all throughout the house, and smoking lots of butts. Smoking butts. And there were two things that I didn't really like that much as a kid. So I was like, what if I don't have those things when I get older?
That's amazing.
So I spent most of my life learning how to not smoke all the butts and not have a wicked hot accent.
I love that. I love how you can just pull it out because, I grew up in Texas and I don't think that I have I know I have a Southern accent, but nothing too prominent, but it's pretty easy to pull that out, especially if you have a couple beers.
The drawl just shows up and that's what happens, right? Couple beers in, right? That's what happens. That is what happens.
Yep.
That's so good. Well, now we know who we're wearing. This is fantastic. What a good start to the show. Let's get into topic number one of the day, as we affectionately have called this since we started the show, the Nerd Zone. It's really where our news is at. A ton of topics today for the Nerd Zone. So, Garrett, I'm going to pass this over to you to get things started. What'd you bring to the table today for the Nerd Zone?
Sure. Well, I mean, again, not to anyone's surprise and kind of not depressing, but, just kind of impactful how much news was available to report on. The first one I want to talk about is the Evolve Bank data breach. If anyone's not familiar with Evolve Bank, they're a financial institution that's very popular with fintech or financial technology startups. Its initial reporting right now, there's no real intel on the blast radius that I could find. There's no intel on any kind of attack method or entry point for this attack. But threat actors have they've already leaked the data on the dark web. So I mean, as far as like the data impact that's known, but who all is affected, we're not totally sure yet. One of the affected startups, the fintech startup Mercury, said that the breach involved account numbers, deposit balances, business owner names, and emails. So, as far as personal financial information
Wow.
goes, that's pretty much everything.
I know who you are, and now I know how much money you have.
That's right. An interesting thing as I started to dig deeper into this story, though, is that I noticed that Evolve has been admonished several times in the past by the Fed, by the Federal Reserve, as early as I think early 2023, but also as recently as July 14th. I'm reading my notes here, where the Fed ordered Evolve to bolster its risk management programs around fintech partnerships, as well as anti-money laundering laws, which read into that as you like, but pretty interesting.
I know what you said, and I know what your brain said. You said July 14th. I'm like, wait, no, we're not there yet, right? No,
I
we're not
said
there.
June.
But
I meant
June
June.
14th. All right,
Sorry.
we're on the same page.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting.
Mhm. Mhm.
The
The Fed has been all over them, apparently.
I don't know if I've followed these guys before, so this is interesting, and now I want to follow more and see. If you just think about the type of industry they're in, right? Fintech startups. So I'm guessing, a place where people are storing their money, or maybe a company that's investing in fintech startups. Um, but
Well, because you've got, startup friendly banks like we've seen in the past, like maybe Silicon Valley Bank or
mm,
things like that. They've got one that's very, central to the fintech area. I don't know anything about financial institutions, banks, money. I mean, ask my partner. I don't even know how much money we have. Um, but it's interesting that there were some examinations conducted in 2023 that found that Evolve had already been engaging in unsafe and unsound banking practices by failing to have in place an effective risk management framework for those partnerships. So when I hear that, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this as well, Sean, but I hear third-party risk, dependencies between software applications that are sharing and processing this data, because they're specifically talking about fintech companies that Evolve is partnering with.
yeah, what I hear just reading and hearing you read this quote is a startup in itself that's still living fast and loose, which that's, startups live by living in the Wild West. That's how they
Yes,
create and evolve and create the next great thing that we don't even know we need. But the risk
that's right.
of startups is they don't have a lot of controls in place, right? So they
Nope.
need to do what they need to do to succeed, to not go under, to get to market before the competition. And with that, you don't have a lot of controls in place. And of course, if you have a
Nope.
company that is responsible for considerable amount of money for big financial players, there in itself is a major risk. And that's I think that's one of the main reasons why companies in the financial services space are highly regulated. Thinking
That's
about
right.
when they are smaller, maybe they aren't going to have a lot of controls in place. They're going to be fast and loose. And of course, here's a nice juicy target for the bad guys. Say, oh, a company that has access to a lot of money and they probably don't have a good security program in place. Let's go hit
Right.
them before we hit a city, bank type of a company or a Fidelity type of a company.
That's right. I think that'd be an interesting topic for the future, kind of try to understand the compromise between security and agility when talking about startups. Because you and I both have a lot of experience with startups, and I think it's a really interesting topic. And again, I don't want to delve too much into it, but you have to be really careful how much you're investing in security because it could potentially slow down your business. An interesting tidbit about this Evolve data breach or this Evolve bank breach is that Lockbit, everyone's favorite ransomware group, they actually tried to use some of this data combined with a bunch of just garbage to claim that they had compromised the Federal Reserve. Um, the Fed, kind of like how they do, called that bluff, and after extensive analysis, confirmed that the claim was bogus. But it's really interesting when you try to consider and understand, well, why did they do this, or did they do this on purpose? Was this truly a bluff, or was this just a mistake on part of the threat actor?
So this is interesting
Because
because wasn't
uh
wasn't Lockbit kind of taken down by the feds, like a global group within the last, I don't know, 60 days or so. But hearing their name mentioned again just makes me, I don't know, just go back to the fact that supposedly I thought they were dismantled, but maybe I have to go back and check my notes.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting. Again, you can still have folks that might come out of the woodwork claiming to be lockbit. It's kind of like the whole anonymous problem. I mean, again, you have good threat intelligence. You can pinpoint exactly who to attribute it to, but that's not stopping someone from saying, "Hey, I'm lockbit and I'm taking credit for this."
And
Because
we took over the Fed.
we took over the Federal Reserve, which again, that's not the target that I would pick if I was a threat actor. Not that I am, please. So what's funny is we've seen a lot of bluffs like this in the past. In fact, it's becoming more and more common. This is a common, military tactic to kind of feint or, and there's many reasons why you would do this. Probably the most common is just to kind of test what an organization or a nation state's defenses look like. You kind of send a shot across the bow, see how they react, and that might help you fine tune a later, more targeted attack. This could be for misdirection. You could be launching an attack over here to, disguise some other activity over on the side. Um,
Right. Look, yeah, it's kind of the shell game. Like, hey, look over here, look over here. Don't, look over to the left. Don't look over to the right because the right
that's
is
right.
where I'm doing the real bad stuff, and I'm just making you think I'm doing something bad over on the left.
Yeah, like David Copperfield, makes an explosion on the right, and he's like, I don't know, stuffing his shirt into his thumb over on the left. I don't know. I don't do magic. That was probably the worst example
That's
ever.
fantastic.
Um, we've seen people bluff in the past to see if people will just pay. A lot of people are, so worried about the potential ramifications to their reputation that they'll pay just to get people to shut up. And we've seen that in the past as well. Um, an organization could bluff to bolster their reputation or street cred to kind of get some attacks under their belt. And
Mm.
again, hoping that no one's going to actually dig too deeply to see if it's actually a legit attack. Speaking of reputation, you could be bluffing an attack to try to affect the target's reputation. Because again, um, we live in kind of this very fast-paced, news cycle, and a lot of folks will see headlines like this and won't dig in. They've already made up their mind of, oh, Target's unsafe to shop at because they had a data breach, and we saw that happen immediately after that news was reported.
Right.
Directly related to that, you could be trying to affect their reputation to possibly affect or manipulate the stock market. You could and again, I know nothing about money, trust me, but you could be, launching these attacks to make a quick, like stock transaction, maybe affect the price and then buy low or whatever. Again, I know nothing about money. Or this could be a genuine mistake. I've said this before, I'll say it again. Most criminals are not the smartest individuals. Otherwise, they'd be doing, tech podcasts like we do.
Like who? Like
But
who?
oh,
Anyone you know?
like you and I. But no, it could have just been a genuine mistake. This could have been not a bluff, but just a oopsie. We didn't do that. Um, and just to kind of cap this off, because I would be remiss if I didn't offer some ways to kind of deal with these, fake or bluffed breaches. Um, First and foremost, and I will never get off this soapbox, have an incident response plan. Treat every breach as if it's a real thing initially. I mean, that's its own kind of measure of how much time you're going to spend on, responding to a breach before confirm that it's legitimate. Sean, I know you've participated in many
Yeah,
tabletops.
I
We've
think
talked
that's
about that
in
before.
itself that's an interesting thing just to help, educate our listeners. Treat every security event as if it is like a real legitimate incident.
Yep.
Start there, right? Start there, start your investigation, start your documentation, and if you come to realize it's not a thing, then great. Then you can pause, you can stop, you can throw away, you can archive what you've done. But if you start with the thought of assume breach first, you
Yep.
get that head start on the potential response recovery steps. Yeah.
Well, and that's good for everyone. There's a lot of stories that I actually can't discuss at all that involve, a possible breach that happened. The potential target responded very well, and had a great kind of rapport building with all of their companies that they do business with. And conversely, I've had targets that they've had a breach, and their response is, well, we don't know if it's a real breach, and that immediately will erode confidence with your partners and things of that nature. So just have a plan, have a way to respond to this. Like I said, do simulations, have PR and customer communications at the ready in the event that this is an actual breach. Don't wait to find out that this to confirm that it is a breach before you start drafting your comms plan. That's something that you want to have kind of at your fingertips.
Yeah, good. Those are good. Those are good tips and things you should write into your incident response plan, right? And then,
Yep.
and have some tabletop test exercises with those people, like include them in so they're ready for when you call them in the event of,
Yep.
of actually having a security incident.
Well, and to my point earlier, instead of just like paying to get the potential threat actor to shut up, actually have a look at the data. I don't recommend that everyone do this, but if you're a trained professional like Sean or an internet deviant like myself, there are ways to safely navigate the dark web to actually get a look at your leaked data. Again, we're not going to go into that in the show because I don't want to have anyone launch their own investigations out there. But I would definitely, if you're not familiar with those, that trade craft of actually looking at the leaked data, involve a security professional or a firm that knows how to do that. Because again, that's a very known and routine thing to actually have a look at the data. You can compare that data to data found in previous breaches. I know I've plugged Have I Been Pwned before, today's sponsor, haveibeenpwned.com. That's another great way to use that service, is to compare the data that they have identified with this potential leak data that you found. Use canaries. Hopefully everyone's familiar with canary tokens that you can kind of seed, files or elements of your data structure that are known to you that have very unique identifiers to where if they are found in the wild, that could be confirmation of an actual data breach or a legitimate data breach.
Yeah, good way to
Um,
look at, have fake pieces of important intellectual property stored around your network. So in
that's
the
right.
case of a bad guy getting in, hopefully they go to this fake juicy target known as a canary that you've placed somewhere, and you can then identify that there is someone trying to do bad activity in your environment. And fortunately, you were able to identify them with fake data, and
That's
they're
right.
and they're relatively cheap to buy too.
Relatively cheap to buy, cheap to instrument. You just kind of have to know what you're doing. But again, if you don't, leverage the help of a security professional or firm. That's again a very routine thing that folks can help you with. And lastly, on this topic, as far as how to thwart these possible fake data breaches and then confirm them or whatever. This is a big obvious one, kind of a duh moment, but leverage your detection methods. Use them to investigate the breach. Obviously, like don't sit on your laurels and just start to respond. Like look into it. Leverage the data that you've already collected. Again, leverage external firms if you're kind of getting an inkling that this might be real. That's always a good reason to have an IR retainer, is so that you can engage some of those preliminary resources to start to confirm or refute
You
the
said
fact
something
that this
that
is
was
a
that's
legit
been on my
breach.
as you were walking through. That's exactly what was on my mind. If folks are listening, saying, "I don't know where to start," Google incident response retainer, and
Yep,
you'll see a lot of things. There's a lot of vendors out there that do just this, and there are companies out there you can connect with, where you put a little bit of money aside, and they are at the ready to come help you in the event of any type of cybersecurity, information security issue. And there's a whole slew of issues where they can come help. The big ransomware issue, obviously the things we talk about a lot, or email breach investigations. They're there to help with. Garrett, what do you have on this?
I just want to add one quick thing to that. If you are living and dying by cyber insurance, make sure that the IR firm that you have chosen is on the cyber insurance's list of, approved IR vendors, incident response vendors. Because man, let me tell you, I can neither confirm nor deny that this has happened to me. But you start to use an IR firm that your cyber insurer does not approve of, they will not pay that claim. Sorry, I should say there's a high proclivity
they may not.
They will not
they
pay
may
that
not.
claim.
It's so funny. That was the next thing I was thinking about as well. Is if your company has cybersecurity insurance, go call up your insurer and say, hey, who do you recommend? Who's on your list? And they'll give you lists of maybe their managed detection and response vendors, their managed security systems vendors. They'll give you recommendations for their incident response vendors. These will be people who are on their list. And if you're using those vendors in the likelihood, in the unlikelihood, in the event of an unlikely attack or breach in your environment, they will be much more favorable if you're using vendors that they support and have on their short list. Yep.
And that just supports the notion that I've always maintained: be prepared. Just be prepared. That is one of your best defenses. Is just imagine the scenario, run through it, and just kind of have a routine to respond.
Yep. Good stuff, Garrett. Okay, cool. I've got one here. In the news this week, Kaspersky, we've all been hearing about Kaspersky for the better part of the past 10 years. Cybersecurity company based out of Russia, several years back, was identified to have some malicious capabilities in their software that was potentially reporting back to Mothership Russia, and U.S. government started pulling their software out, saying no U.S. government entities should be using Kaspersky security products any further. And so, of course, that probably really damaged the brand a whole lot.
Quite a bit.
Now, today in the news, the U.S. Treasury Department has now sanctioned 12 Kaspersky executives, along with the software ban that has gone even further. So, as I've been reading about this, the U.S. Commerce Department is now prohibiting Kaspersky from providing its software and other security services in America, starting July 20th this year, citing national security concerns. The company's also been placed on the entity list. So this is, if you're hearing this saying, wait, this sounds like Groundhog Day. Didn't we hear about this years ago? This is a step further. Before, it was just the U.S. government was not allowed to run this software anymore. They needed to pull it and put in replace it with different security products. Now there is a sanction list saying that Kaspersky products can no longer be purchased in the U.S. Period.
Wow. And what recent analysis precipitated this? Did we find out more about potential links to security threats, or is just more of kind of dogpiling?
I think it's what it all appears is that it's just that continued investigation that has gone on for years, and now most recently coming out of the U.S. Department of Treasury of Foreign Assets, OFAC. They've imposed a whole bunch of sanctions on leaders of the company, including leaders all across the Kaspersky company, Kaspersky Labs. And this all began a day after the company was banned by the Commerce Department. So the Commerce Department continued to investigate the issues from years ago, have strong belief that what we heard about years ago in the news was that Kaspersky was reporting back to the government and not protecting customers' data, and they hold strong to that. They have now gone as far as having sanctions across 12 C-level people in the company. The CTO, the COO, the chief legal officer, the chief HR officer have all been sanctioned by the U.S. government. This is kind of insane and kind of a big deal that a cybersecurity company, right? One of our own, vendors out in industry, the U.S. government's double downing on and saying nobody in America buy this stuff anymore, and we're sanctioning these people. If they ever get into our area, we're going to potentially go after them.
Well, something that I'm kind of noticing, and those that are familiar with Kaspersky know that, Eugene Kaspersky has done a lot of great things for the security community, done a lot of research, built a lot of pretty novel technologies. I noticed that he was not on the sanctions list.
He's not on the list.
Any intel on that?
No. The only knowledge I noticed is that he was left off the list. Eugene Kaspersky, the founder, the CEO of the company, OFAC has stated not on the list.
Interesting. Wow. I'll just I'll just bite my tongue on that one, but I have some conspiracy type theories as to why that might be. But we'll just we'll put that on a recorded line. How about
Maybe we'll learn more down the road. Garrett, what else you got?
that? Okay, in a shocking turn of events, our friends at the Internal Revenue Service, the
Nobody says
IRS.
our friends at the IRS.
Well, if you're watching me on video, I'm
Our
smiling
friends
ear
at the
to
IRS.
ear.
Got it.
They issued a public apology to a bunch of rich people when their tax information was stolen and leaked to the media. Do you remember Ken Griffin, the head of the hedge fund Citadel? Him and a bunch of other fabulously rich individuals, yeah, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, other people. They had their private financial records leaked by this an internal threat, an insider threat. Contractor by the name of Charles Littlejohn. I guess he got. I mean, I don't. Again, I'm not endorsing him at all, but I understand the motivation. He probably got mad and leaked all this data out to the media actually, which was largely damaging, I'm sure, to whatever reputation they had. But what I found interesting is that the IRS issued a public apology to these super rich people, saying that we're sorry that our lack of controls allowed this contractor to leak this information. I just found that kind of interesting. Any thoughts on that one there, Sean?
Someone who has done work in the IRS years ago, not in the cybersecurity space, well before I was in that space. It's just interesting to think about. You get a contractor come in, give them access to systems, and then data leaks. So forget it being the IRS. Forget the big names that are tied to this.
Mhm.
Just think about the problems of onboarding employees and onboarding contractors at your company, at any company.
Right. Yep.
There's the importance of doing maybe background checks, different checks of anybody who comes into your environment. But I'm saying this because I did work at the IRS years ago, and I actually thought they had a pretty thoughtful background check process, which I do believe they still have. But here's the risk, right? There's the risk of who you let into your environment, who you let into your buildings, who you let into your systems, and are those people getting the appropriate privileges to do their jobs? Are they getting, the principle of least privilege? Did Charles Littlejohn have all the access they needed to get their job done, and they still leaked this data? Or did Charles Littlejohn get access to a whole lot more data than they should have, and then
Right.
already being slightly malicious mindset say, well, since I can get this data, I will go share it, right? It goes
Well,
back
this could be
it goes back really to are we doing good background checks? Or are people coming on board? And are we limiting the principle of least privilege, giving people just the access they need to get their job done? And it's
right.
that thought of, we need to think about the external threat as well as the internal threat. If we go back to the Verizon data breach investigations report of last week, we learned that 15% of cybersecurity incidents come from the inside, come from the Charles Littlejohns of the world.
That's right. Well, and you can draw a tangential relation back to what we were talking about earlier. Like, how fervent are you on your cybersecurity controls? I know a lot of, that does not apply to the IRS, but I know a lot of startups and early stage companies, when we rely on contractors. Like, that's something that we use to force multiply our efforts. We don't have the budget or the time to hire full-time employees. So, we hire contractors, and then are we giving contractors, like you said, full access like a regular employee? Are we giving them a corporate device? Are we letting them use their own devices? And then I love what you're talking about with the kind of, zero, principle of least privilege. Are you giving them access to this data for however long they need it? Are you giving it to them out for an hour and having to have them request it every single time? There's a lot of controls that, some may not be available to the common organization, but certainly available to the behemoth organization that is the IRS, to have limited the scope of that. And I think that that's probably what they're referring to when they say, they had some issues with their risk management policies.
Yeah, as you were walking through this, I'm thinking of, how would I use this information to help inform myself and other executives to say, if this were to occur to us, how could we have improved things to reduce this risk from happening?
Right.
I mean, we don't know the details, so I'm speaking as if we know the details. I don't know if Charles Littlejohn had all the access they needed to get their job done, or too much access. I don't know that. I don't
Right.
know if there was a background check or not. But these are like two things that jump right out as you walk through this. And then there's sometimes the risks that just you can't see. Person can pass a background check and has a malicious mindset no matter what. I think there's a lot of folks who can very easily pass a background check that says, "Yep, hasn't been arrested. Has not, had financial issues in life," right? Because that's
Right.
things that background checks look for.
You did a background check on me before you hired me as the CFO for Cybersecurity Growth, right?
Um,
Don't,
Sorry, I
don't worry
couldn't
about
hear
it.
you. I think the audio and video cut out. Couldn't hear what you said.
No worries.
Hmm.
We're fine. All
Yep.
good.
Great. Fantastic. So, anyways, yeah, interesting topic. And one of the things is, as I was kind of giving you my thoughts on this one, is this could possibly have been a risk where, yeah, what could we have done ahead of the fact that it was Charles Littlejohn, government contractor? It still could have been Charles Littlejohn, employee of the IRS, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
still working on behalf of the IRS. So
Yep. Yep.
it's just interesting that, a contractor who's there for no more than a year on contract to do some work for this organization came and did bad things. Which is sometimes different from the internal person who might have been there for 10 years and got jaded along their ride and wanted to do something nasty on the way out the door.
Yep. Yep.
Anyways,
All right, Sean, back to you. What do you got?
continuing on, there's a company called CDK Global. This comes from Reuters. It's really interesting. A company called CDK Global. So they are a data provider whose software is used in car dealerships to handle everything from records and scheduling. They're all over the U.S. They were hit by a cyber attack on June 19th, and it caused the company to shut down most of its systems. CDK's software, it's used by over 15,000 car dealerships in the United States. So if you don't buy your car online, I know a lot of people do these days, but if you go and buy a car and you go into the store and you get the salesperson who's like, "Hey, can I help you?" Many of those salespeople for the last few weeks couldn't help you. They couldn't actually.
That's its own topic of how much I hate that transaction. But
they
yeah,
couldn't
we'll
actually.
save you from
They
that.
couldn't actually say, "Hold on, stay right here. Let me go get my manager," to try to get you to close that. What would it take you to take this Corolla home today? A lot of
I'm going to write down this price on a piece of paper. I want you to sign it.
Just gonna slide it right over.
Yeah.
So 15,000 car dealerships not able to use their computers to sell cars, right? So
That's huge.
it's enormous, right? They were resorted to using paper to transact deals, and it's still offline for a lot of these organizations. They're saying that they don't expect to get the systems all back online before June 30th. And I was reading a little bit more this morning. They're saying it's likely going to go into July.
And do we know, is this like customer records management, financial data? Do we know kind of what CDK specifically handles, or?
My understanding is it includes like scheduling information. So, scheduling car deliveries,
Got it.
the schedules for
Logistics type
all,
stuff.
all of the logistics of the purchase.
Okay.
So I don't
Got
think
it.
it's the purchase data. I think it's mostly like the scheduling. So maybe getting cars transported from one location to another, scheduling when deliveries take place. That's my understanding of it.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So if you've been trying to buy a car for the last couple weeks and for some reason, you've got a check in your pocket that's burning a hole and some reason the salesperson isn't willing to take that check, this might be the reason.
Where my mind goes is, how can I use this to put the screws to the car dealerships and get a
Right.
car cheaper? Like, can I use this to my advantage? God, I hate that whole process. I don't want to go into that, but man,
Different
my
story.
least favorite thing. What else? TeamViewer, everyone's favorite remote access tool, had their corporate network breached. Now, that's not huge news, but what I found very interesting is how they immediately responded with, "Okay, listen, sure, our corporate environment was breached, but not your data, not our production environment," which, as you and I know, is probably I don't want to call it complete BS, but come on. Like,
So TeamViewer, the company, right? Let's all just picture this for a second. Picture your own company when we say this. I love always just like taking the page and flipping it over, right? TeamViewer, the
mhm,
company, they have their whole corporate environment over here, but all
mhm,
of their development and product production environments are over here. And I know a lot
mhm.
of us can say, yeah, it is kind of separate that way. You know, the IT guys are over here, the product guys are over here. And
Nope.
you're telling me that their Microsoft's Entra ID login over here doesn't work over here? You're telling me their Okta login that's on the corporate side doesn't somehow SSO them into something in the development or production environment? Is that what you're
I
telling me,
mean,
TeamViewer? TeamViewer, are you telling
anyone,
me that all of the development teams just live in AWS Cognito and that's where all the identity lives and there's no SSO, MFA over to the corporate environment? I don't believe you, TeamViewer.
no, anyone with any experience within, I mean, IT, security, hell, just like working at a company knows that there are concessions that are made. There are identities that are shared between corporate and production. It happens all the time. Now, we as security professionals, we advise that you do not do that and actually do provide or develop some real segmentation, but it exists. Like almost always. And whenever we do any kind of assessment, Sean, I know you've had to do this plenty of times, myself included. That is one of the first things that we find
So
is, the ability to move laterally throughout the network still exists, even though you said that you haven't. And to drive the nail into the coffin even further, the entity that seems to have taken responsibility for this is our friends APT 29, aka Cozy Bear, aka an offshoot of the Russian SVR, an intelligence group. So I
we're
would,
back.
yeah, I would hazard a guess that if anyone is possible to move laterally from corporate to production systems, it would be folks that are this motivated and financially backed as Cozy Bear.
Yeah, no,
So
it makes it,
again,
it totally makes sense, right? Because I'm sure there's nobody at TeamViewer whose corporate IT username and password is the exact same username and password as their AWS account or whatever development environment
yeah,
their
baloney,
systems are in. Not nobody
baloney, man.
reads those passwords
No, definitely
in
not.
technology world. But at the same time, this is what TeamViewer says today. You know, they did come out and say their network has been breached. They are stating they have a security incident. We may learn more, right? In today's day and age of report now and update that report later, we can give to them they are reporting now. So let's keep an eye on how this evolves.
That's a good point because their official statement, if we look at the verbatim of their statement, is there is no evidence to suggest that the product environment or customer data is affected. So that still 100% leaves the door open to, oh shit, we found some evidence.
Yeah.
So now there is.
Yeah, and so that aligns with report now because you have to, if you're a
That's right.
publicly traded company, you need to report now, and it's also the right thing to do to report now, and then update your report later as you go. But as
That's
we
right.
are pontificating how this is going to play out, we will likely
Yep.
find out that somehow it did touch a development environment or a production environment.
Yep.
What else you got here?
Okay.
One more in here?
I got one more in here, and this one hits kind of a little bit of a personal chord, little hitting too close to home. So I've got a lot of educators in my family, both relatives, my partner, I've got a child. So I mean, like, educators, teachers, very special to me, and also local to my home turf. The Association of Texas Professional Educators, they had more than this is a big number, Sean. 414,000 teachers have been
Wow.
affected. And this is what kind of encompasses what I've now deemed the triumvirate of suck, which is PII, personal identifiable information, PFI, personal financial information, and PHI, all of it. Because if you think about it, they probably consolidated a lot of, banking, personal information, maybe some healthcare type, insurance type stuff, but all of that type of data was affected, and has been leaked. And it's interesting because these are teachers like who like they don't have it bad enough. I mean, I think teachers really get the short end of the stick as far as what they provide to our community in comparison to what they get paid. It's just constantly being underfunded, especially here in Texas, which is not to get on a political bent, but It's just kind of a shameful thing how we treat teachers here, and then they get hit with a cyber attack,
And leaks
which
everything about their personal private data.
that's right. And again, not trying to make any kind of judgment call, but likely not folks that are taking really advanced measures to protect their data or segment their data out. This is probably extremely damaging to these folks. And then, not like this is a foreign concept to me, but it seems like their investigation has taken a really long time to
When did
figure
this?
this
When
out.
did this? When was this detected? When did it come to light?
Well, I'm not sure when it was detected, but the ATPE, as the group is known, they reported suspicious activity February 12th, but they didn't complete their investigation until March 20th. So over a month later, which is not unheard of, but I would think that being, related to education, some sort of, government entity, as soon as the words rolled out of my mouth, I realized how foolish that sounds. But you would think that they would have a little bit more advanced, timeline that they would try to get this done on. But it just seems to have taken a long time, and now our teachers are kind of suffering as a result of it.
As many of them are breaking for summer, now they're having to deal with the potential fallout of their data being publicly
That's right.
exposed, and now getting bizarre vishing, pretexting type scenarios, calling them at home, messaging them, emailing them, trying to get them to
Yeah.
click on things in hopes of punishing them further.
Well, and the last thing I'll say about this, and I couldn't find any evidence of this, but hopefully there's some sort of concerted effort to your point, train them on how to spot, some of the potential attacks that might come as a result of this leak, phishing, vishing, things of that nature to hopefully maybe, thwart some of these attacks. Hopefully.
Oh, unbelievable. Well, all right. We're wrapping up the nerd zone. We're going into
Yep.
our hot topic of the day. This is a unique hot topic for us in a sense, because our hot topic this week is actually just a continuation of the nerd zone, to be honest. Each of us had found a couple different news articles that we wanted to touch base on, and they all pointed to one specific area. So I thought it would make sense for us to learn a little bit about this area and what are we learning that's happening out in the cyber areas. So welcome to our hot topic today. We call this the breach blizzard of 2024. Why do we call it the breach blizzard of 2024? Well, today we want to learn about a company called Snowflake, right? We talked about Snowflake on a previous episode. They've been in the news as of late, and there are quite a few reports out there around cybersecurity. So first off, we're going to learn a little bit about what is this company known as Snowflake. So let's start there. Snowflake is a cloud data platform. To be more specific, I'm literally taking their words. To be more specific, it's the first cloud-built data platform. Its architecture allows data specialists to not only create data warehouses, but also cloud data lake houses, because it can
What?
manage both structured and unstructured data easily. I read the paragraph that I pulled from some content trying to understand this, and I think I walk away more confused after reading
Yeah,
it.
same. Well, and this is one of the things, and I'm really glad you brought this up because as this has been in the news, even I am kind of being, confused as to like, wait, what are they doing, and how did this happen, and what is Snowflake? Some people just think it's a database, but my God, it's way more than that.
And it's okay. So they mentioned the word data lake. So let's educate ourselves a smidge on what a data lake is. So I went and did some searching, and our friends over at Azure at Microsoft helped get me some information on what a data lake is, and I'm learning the difference between data warehouses and data lakes. So
I want to know what a data lake house is, though, because that's even more
I was hoping to spend
compelling.
my summers at a data lake house. That's where I
Out on
want
Lake Tawakoni,
yes. On my pontoon
That's
boat
right.
at my
That's
data
right.
lake house. A data lake is a centralized repository that ingests and stores large volumes of data in its original form. The data can then be processed and used as a basis for a variety of analytical needs. So it's a big ass database,
Yeah, so
unstructured.
yeah, okay. That makes sense.
Okay, and then and that can be used to do all different types of analysis. And of course, the security person's like, oh, okay, so it's something that my SOC team can probably refer to go do lots of investigations, but I know they weren't built for the security teams. They're built for the other parts of the business who have massive amounts of data and probably massive amounts of unstructured data and structured data, and the organization trying to figure out what do we do with all this data. Data lake. Some data lake use cases. I grabbed a few of them that I thought are interesting. Who would use a data lake? Because I still don't get it. Streaming media companies could use a data lake. So subscription-based streaming companies collect and process insights on customer behavior where they can improve their recommendation algorithm. Okay, so now I'm thinking like, oh, like Netflix, Spotify. Okay, they want to know what we're watching, what we're listening to, so they can help improve our user experience. And so a data lake is a place where lots of data can go, and then the analysts, whether they're human or AI, can go leverage all that data to make the thing better for me. Okay, I'm getting somewhere with this.
Okay.
Finance companies. Investment firms use the most up-to-date market data, which is collected and stored in real time to efficiently manage portfolio risks.
Now, I wonder if that's because they're kind of skipping the line in indexing and making a bunch of relational assessments on the data. They just kind of use it in its raw form because of how quickly that information comes out and needs to be processed. Maybe that's why the data lake is more conducive to that.
Maybe. Two idiots here on the podcast trying to figure out what this is. But this is how technologists work. We got to go read some stuff and try to figure it out, and then eventually we fake it until we make it.
I'm still trying to imagine and visualize my security pontoon boat on my data lake.
Data lake. I can't wait till you invite me to your data lake house, so we can go and enjoy some Narragansetts or Pabst Blue Ribbons on the pontoon boat. Other companies,
fishing comes into play. The puns just write themselves.
We can, as we're fishing all day long off that pontoon boat.
Oh God.
Okay, healthcare uses data lakes. Healthcare organizations rely on big data to improve the quality of care for patients. Hospitals use vast amounts of historical data to streamline patient pathways, resulting in better outcomes and reduced cost of care. I'm starting to get it. Organizations who have massive amounts of data and they just have been collecting it, and they continue to collect it because we are in the world of data, of just data collection. All right,
I think about the different types of like IoT devices involved in healthcare. I'm sure all their logs look completely different. The metrics they're collecting look very different. And again, the brunt historically has always been on like, SIMs and log parsers and stuff to normalize that data. So maybe this again is a way to kind of circumvent the necessity of normalizing that data for analysis.
Yeah, maybe. IoT was actually on the list. I didn't put it on the rundown here, but they were one of the types of products. All right, the last one I had on here from a use case is the omni-channel retailer. I'm familiar with this because I had worked in this space years ago. So retailers use data lakes to capture and consolidate data that's coming in from multiple touch points, including mobile, social, chat, word of mouth, and in person. So if you think about your retailer who has your favorite retailer who has a huge online presence, and you may be thinking of just one, I'm actually thinking about 20 or 30 of them. They have just a ton of data. People using the application, people searching, people browsing, people finding products they like, finding products they don't like, doing reviews, posting links on their social media. How do you capture all these data points? Here comes a data lake to help
and aggregate it and kind of deal with it.
So the data lake is the things that help collect things, and then you can bring the analysts, whether they're people or bots, to come in and do some. Okay, we're getting there. We're starting to understand a little bit about data lakes. Our Garrett's data lake house, my pontoon boat, and our favorite cheap beer. This is fantastic. Why are we talking about this today? Well, here we go. The folks over at Cisco Thales, the intelligence team over at Cisco, has been reporting of some wide security implications following the Snowflake breach. We touched on this over the last couple weeks. We'd mentioned Ticketmaster and another company who are Snowflake customers having data breaches, and there's some points pointing to their use of the Snowflake products. So here's what the folks at Thales are saying. The breach involved attackers using stolen login credentials to infiltrate customer accounts. The credentials were not protected by multi-factor authentication,
Oh, come on.
allowing attackers to steal sensitive information. However, the Talos team makes the argument that the incident is not just about Snowflake, but indicates a broader shift in cyber threats focusing on identity and compromised credentials. So let's stop on this for a second here. Snowflake has had some form of a data breach that is impacting several organizations, and these are accounts where usernames and passwords have been gathered by bad actors, and MFA is not in place. Here we go again.
I mean, I should be wearing my shirt. Enable MFA. Enable MFA.
3 shows in a row.
It is 3 shows in a row. It's the easiest thing to do. Enable multi-factor authentication. I cannot say that enough. Man, that makes me mad.
You had something here about Neiman Marcus in the news?
Well, yeah, I mean, Neiman Marcus was one of the one of the affected companies. That was one of the more recent ones that's coming out to publicly disclose that they've been affected by this breach.
So here's some of the things that we both found interesting pieces. A piece that I found was from Bitdefender. It came from the Office of the State Maine Attorney General. Neiman Marcus was made aware of unauthorized access to its database in May of 2024. And the breach impacted over 64,000 people. Based on the investigation, an unauthorized third party obtained certain personal information stored in the database platform. The database platform here is Snowflake, by the way. Based on the letter that we were reading, promptly after learning of the issue, Neiman Marcus took steps to contain it, including disabling access to relevant database platforms.
But I mean, by then the damage had probably already been done.
And so as they identified the PII that was compromised in the breach, it included individuals' names, email addresses, phone numbers, date of birth, Neiman Marcus gift card numbers without pins, but the numbers were in there, but the pins were not in there.
In the grand scheme of things, that's not that bad for PII leakage, but I mean, still, it's bad enough.
And this report that I'm reading from was released today. This is
Nice.
in today's news. So this is the next fresh piece that we're seeing from this. I am understanding that we are now likely to see 200 to 300 companies impacted by this same event. What else do you have on this?
Yeah.
Do you have anything else on this one?
I think the initial report was like 165 companies, but yeah, I think you're right. I think we're probably going to find out about a lot more. What I found out interesting about this particular attack was that this data, for first and foremost, Neiman Marcus declined, and allegedly, I should give that disclaimer. Allegedly, Neiman Marcus declined to pay the ransom when they were contacted by the threat actors, and so the threat actors sold this data for $150,000.
Wow,
which
big money.
that's actually kind of big
No.
money for the dark web transaction. It's not big money for how much they were trying to hold it for ransom, but you're trying to offload this on the dark web. That's a significant amount of coin. To add to your kind of scary stats about this, it was apparently some odd like 70 million transactions. You mentioned the gift cards. It was like 12 million gift card numbers, which, again, that's damaging to the organization, not necessarily damaging to the clients, because hopefully Neiman Marcus will, honor those existing gift cards. But again, depending on the impact, they may not financially be able to do that. But just a massive amount of data that was leaked.
Were customer records involved in this? Did you see?
So what I saw, much like what you reported, name, address, phone, date of birth, email, last four of the social security, and much more was what I was kind of left with. But that's enough to start a identity fraud campaign. I mean, I mentioned earlier, like, that's not that much data on someone, but it's enough. You can use that information depending on your social engineering prowess to use that to gain access to other records. Because as we've mentioned before, not everyone is fastidious about keeping that information segmented and protected with unique passwords and MFA and things of that nature.
As someone I've worked in retail as a retailer. I've worked in retail as a security professional. One thing that comes to mind when I think about customer records being leaked, so we're talking about Neiman Marcus here. In some cases, some of the customer records may also include private health information, right? So if you think about a customer at Neiman Marcus, you're thinking, high-end fashion, right? Expensive clothing. But are there prescription glasses being sold at Neiman Marcus? If so, there's a prescription. And if so, there's personal health data that's in there. So the PII can extend into, the PHI data, HIPAA data breaches that, will have to trigger different types of investigations as well.
Yep, agreed.
So
any other downstream ramifications you've identified?
Well, when we talked about this a couple weeks ago, we were talking about Ticketmaster. So, coming from wired.com, it's just like it's article after article. It's not like we're bringing our own deep, dark intelligence. We're just doing some searches and finding more and more outlets, finding more information about this one thing, which is why I said, let's learn about this company so we can understand why are there bits and pieces of this being shared in different places. So Wired got an article, had a conversation with Ticketmaster and learned a little bit more about how the hackers actually stole the data. And so now there's a name of the group, the Shiny Hunters hacker actually spoke with Wired that they actually gained access to Ticketmaster's Snowflake cloud account and others by just breaching a third-party contractor. So what I believe we are seeing here is a hacking group got in touch with a third-party contractor. Again, here we go with third-party vendor risk assessment issues. Got in touch with a third-party contractor, and somehow from there, I believe this contractor did work on behalf of Snowflake or Snowflake customers, and they had the access credentials to many different customer accounts. And so bad guys popped open a database of usernames and passwords, and then went to town on Snowflake, on Snowflake with accounts that had no MFA. And they said, well, great, let's just go account after account and take all the data and then figure out what to do once we get it.
This is great news for us that some, moron is willing to, and again, no besmirchment of the journalistic efforts, because great job on capturing this. But to my point earlier of criminal enterprises trying to get more street cred, why on earth would you go and blow the lid off your criminal enterprise? This is like every end scene in James Bond movies where it's like, well, you're about to die, so I'm going to tell you my whole plan on how I did this whole thing. It just, again, I love it. Shiny Hunters, please keep doing this. This is fantastic.
I would have got away for it. I would have got away with it if it weren't for those meddling kids.
That's right. If it weren't for those meddling journalists that just, turn on the tape recorder. I just, again, I don't understand why someone would do this to kind of blow the lid on their operation, but I think it's fantastic. Yeah. Please do more of this.
Yeah, shout out to Kim Zetter at Wired for this article, and Shiny Hunters, just, the hackers that just need to have that rock star status. Just, I want to be in lights, I want to be in magazines, I want to be in print, I want to be on TV, and then you're going to be behind bars because you're giving away your story, your tactics.
This is horrible OPSEC, but again, I love it. I think it's fantastic.
So I believe this is the beginning of a long running story that we're probably going to hear more about as it comes to light. But this is our hot topic today. We learned a little bit about the world of data lakes, data warehouses. We've learned a little bit about a company called Snowflake that's been making its way in the news the past couple weeks and continues to make its way into the news. And now we've learned more about Ticketmaster. We've learned about Neiman Marcus. We've learned that Cisco is following these breaches very deeply and learning more. And I expect we will continue to discuss this in weeks to come.
One of my questions is going to be, because a lot of this involves kind of like the gray area and shared responsibility. How is this going to evolve the kind of shared responsibility security model that Snowflake, other data warehouses, other, third-party entities, period, kind of treat that, because, a lot of people could argue that this was Snowflake's fault. A lot of people could rightly argue that this was not Snowflake's fault, because this was, we gave you the tools to build in this, security and multi-factor authentication and validation. You chose not to. I think what we're also going to see as a result of this is some changes, maybe some bolstering of laws that might impact the notion of shared responsibility, because we see this time and time again of a corporation drawing a line in the sand of where their responsibility ends and where yours begins. And that's kind of up to speculation a lot of times as far as who thinks that that's fair or right or, whatever.
It's unbelievable. Good conversation, though. And here we are again. Well, folks, we're going to wrap it up today. We want to thank you for listening and watching. I am Sean Valley. I'm the creator of the show and the music here on Cybersecurity Growth. You can find us at cybersecuritygrowth.com and all of our shows at cybersecuritygrowth.com/blog. You can find me online at pretty much all the places under @SeanValley or @CybersecurityGrowth. If you like the show, please tell your friends. If you hate it, please tell Shiny Hunters. Please like and subscribe and leave 5 stars and leave a review, something like "great show." I've learned something to help me in my cybersecurity career. Garrett, where can people find you?
Well, I'll definitely be online, but you probably won't be able to find me. So instead, look to me in the rows and racks at Neiman Marcus, maybe buying some Shiny Hunter shoes. Maybe you'll find me enjoying a nice PBR in my data lake house. You never know.
That sounds great. Did you ever, as a kid, the clothing racks that are like a circle all around where you go hide inside
100%.
them?
I know what you're about to say. Yes, I hide inside and just
your clothing fort that you would hide in while mom was shopping, type of a thing.
And just scare the crap out of everyone that walked by. Yes, that was one of my favorite things.
So good. Well, we are coming up on the 4th of July, Independence Day here in the U.S., so I do hope that everybody enjoys the break. I hope everybody gets out to their own data lake house, onto their own pontoon boat, drinks a lovely Narragansett or a Pabst Blue Ribbon, do some fishing, all of those things. This week we did cover the blizzard of 2024, the breach blizzard of 2024. We are live on Twitch every other week, Fridays. Sometimes. All of the words are a lie. Every other week, Fridays at 1:30 p.m. Eastern, 10:30 a.m. Pacific, and 6:30 p.m. GMT. And we are in your pod feeds and YouTube a few days later. We want to thank everybody for hanging out with us today, for joining us on this ride. We hope everybody has a great 4th, and we will see you later on in July. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, folks.